Hello, everyone. Welcome to another broadcast for the Courageous Conversation series brought to you by Events and Excellence Productions and Promotions on the Gregory D platform. We want you to take this time right now to share, to like this post, to share this and tweet. We want you to comment, be active in the chat, and so we can reach more and more people. Today is a wonderful discussion. We have few great guys here on today, and I'm not going to hold the time any longer, but I'm going to turn it over to the hand of the CEO and the chair, Kim Milton-Mackey.
All right, thank you, Gregory D. Thank you for all of our panelists today. It is a very serious topic that we are going to be talking about today. Some of our panel guests may be chiming in a little bit later, but we are going to move forward with the men of excellence that I call that are here today. And without further ado, I'm just going to take some time just to tell you a little bit about them. There is no time. I would take so much time actually to try to read their bios and talk about them all, but they are all phenomenal men. I want to talk about Mr. Michael McKissick. He's the founder and chair of the Mikey 23 Foundation. He's also the owner of McKissick Constructions. I happen to know him personally since I was a little girl, and their family is well known for building lots of buildings, owning houses, working with individuals that are low income. They have been working in the community for many, many years in the background. And so again, thank you, Mr. McKissick, for being on today, and you'll learn some more about him. He had a personal loss of his own, so it's an honor for him to be on here to share. And I can truly say, I have seen him more than I've ever seen, because he's used to being in the background. He's always worked, but now he's coming more towards the front to help young men and young women to be the best that they can be. Thank you, Mike, for being a part of the panel this afternoon. Also want to talk about Carnell Howard, who is a relative of mine. He's in Chicago, Illinois. So Chicago is in town. All right. And then I just want to talk about a little bit. In the early 90s, he began talking and doing things in the communities. He's been a mentor for several programs, the Cabrini Legal Aid, Law and Civic Literacy Institute, ran by the Honorable Dr. Howard from UIC, and also the Jane Addams Institute, One Church, One School of Harvey, Illinois, also Riverdale, Jackson, Harvey Park, coaching basketball, football, wrestling, baseball. Wow, faith-based program designed to get them in and teach them coping skills and soft skills and conflict resolution. That is Carnell. Thank you, Carnell, for being a part of us today. And thank you. Every time I see him, even personally, he always has a youth with him. So his job is not just done, when he is at work. He's all day, he has his phone, he's always constantly giving and giving and giving. So we thank you for being on here. And also I see attorney Michael Oakes just came in, senior attorney at the Oakes Law Group. I've seen him personally advocate for young men of color. I've been actually stunned by his representation, about the advocacy he does. And so thank you again, Mr. Oakes, for being a part of us today. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about Mr. Wayne Lynn. I've worked with him many, many years. His bio, he is phenomenal what he does. He stays in the back also, but he is well known for working with those who nobody wants to work with. So just to give you a little bit about him in the community, Wayne Lynn serves tirelessly in several capacities. He is the chairman of the Board of Water and Light for Lansing, also the Turning Point of Lansing mentoring program for young men 7 through 12. As one of the founding elders of the program in 2001, Wayne has supported growing his programs to serve over 1,000 young men of color in the Lansing community. Today, the Turning Point of Lansing serves for over 50 young men and their families which face the challenges of the pandemic. The program has about a 95% graduation rate, and many of the graduates have become fathers, husband, professionals, and leaders. Thank you all for being a part of something great on tonight. We're going to get right into it. As I said, once we get yours, you'll see a clock over there where it says Gregory D Production, and we're going to give you that much time, but I know some of these topics are very hot. We want you to take your time in responding to them. So our first question is for Mr. Michael McKissick. How do you feel gangs and organized criminal activities changed from the past relating to gun violence?
Thank you, Kim. Thank you all, the panel, for being here, and I really appreciate it. A couple of the panelists that we have here, we work together with our youth and everything. So it's a team effort. You know, it's again, I always say it's going to take all of us in order to curb some of this gun violence that's going on in our city that we call home. So to answer your question about that, we have a lot of things that have changed. All right. So you have to be mindful of what parents raise a different breed or different group of youth, right? Mm-hmm. Even though the youth 20 years ago or 30 years ago, even 40 years ago, was into gangs, selling drugs, and doing similar stuff what the youth are doing now, they was raised with morals, if that makes any sense, right? So they was raised with morals and principles. Even though that they were doing wrong, they still had that respect for the community, so to speak. You have some of them that back then was doing wrong in the community, was helping elderly people out, right? They were paying their bills. They were helping them out. The money, the illicit money that they were making, they was helping out the community back then because of the morals and principles that their parents instilled in them. You have to realize how we came to this point with single moms. Now, the percentage is very high versus back then. Not saying anything about single moms, because single moms are phenomenal. They do the best that they can. But single moms cannot raise a man. They can't do it. They can't raise a man to do certain things and teach him certain things as a man should. And so back then, you had that equation right there. You had the mother and the father in the house, even though some of them went astray. So now, fast forward to now, with the youth and gangs is going on, single moms raised them, didn't have a father figure, didn't have the respect for elderlies, because I know each and every one of us could go to the store, any place that we go, we'll see that they use profanity like it's just their normal language that they don't even care if they're in front of an adult. When we were growing up, and I know everybody can attest to this, we would never say anything disrespectful about an elderly. When we say that, we shut our mouths up. We had that respect. So the difference between then and now is tremendous. So that's why we having this uptick in violence in Lansing, right? We having not just that, and we're having more and more single moms are trying to do the job as a man should. So the whole household, as we see it now, is that, like, for instance, I train youth a building trade, right? So I got two programs. I got an apprentice program with 18 and over, and then I have 17 and below that we train. We call it the summer youth program and after school program. A lot of those, not all of them, but some of them are single moms, right? So having been a single mom and interacting with these kids, and not saying that you can tell, but I'm glad that God has put me in this position to be in their lives, because actually it's not just beneficial for them, it's beneficial for me too, right? Mm-hmm. Because Michael anniversary death is today. It'd be 6 years today when Michael murdered. So 6 years actually exactly today. And so having his anniversary death today is that, I think about him and I think about his legacy, right? So his legacy was always about helping people, right? And he has a mother and father living in the house. He stayed here, and we raised him the best we could. And you really don't know how you raise a child until somebody else come and tell you, right? Because you don't know when they leave the house. So when Michael, and I tell this story, numerous of time, and I'll share it again, that Michael used to work for the McKissick Construction Company family, our family construction company. And one elderly young lady approached my wife and I shortly after his funeral. And she said that, I want to thank you for your son. And my wife and I, we was kind of puzzled. And so she says, you don't know me, but your son, I met your son at the grocery store, and I was short of money. And your son seen I was short of money. He was in back of me. He paid the remaining balance of my grocery bill. From that point on, them two became friends. Never knew it, right? So every 2 weeks, Michael was bringing her groceries, right? And he's always respect. So what I'm saying is that, not saying that me and his mom are the super parents, right? But we try to instill that in our child for giving back and helping others, right? And so again, that's why we're at today where we're at with our youth. And to answer your question, that's my opinion of what I seen back 20, 30, even 40 years ago, and fast forward. And now I think that is the difference.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And thank you for sharing that. And if I could, we certainly didn't know today was the anniversary. So before we go forward, if I could just have everybody just do a moment of silence for him. Thank you. Thank you so much. Then the next question is going to Wayne Lynn. Does controlling gun violence in hard-hit communities require an effective partnership with the police?
Well, she can your camera at the moment. Miss Lee, are you? Miss Kim, can you hear us? Kim,
Yeah.
She can hear.
Yes, right now we are in the session. So can you put your phone, put your phone on mute for us just for a minute here. Thank you. All right, Mr. Lynn, we're starting this time back over.
Thank you. And I appreciate being a part of this esteemed group as well. This is wonderful. Ms. Kim, I would have to correct my introduction. I am not the chairman of the Board of Water and Light. Okay. I don't want Mr. Dick Peffley to come after me. Right. He might be coming for me. I am the director of engineering, and operations for electric, but I am not the chair. But let's talk about the violence and Mike, thank you for that, man. I think the world of you and your work, and you're an inspiration to all of us, man. Appreciate you, my brother. Yes, I do believe that having an effective, and I'm going to add another word, an efficient relationship and partnership with the police. And let me tell you what I mean. I think George Floyd and the whole connection with the African-American community, particularly with men of color, really created, starting back with, all of the other horrific deaths that came about years before that. And I think that we have yet to heal the relationship between the police and our community. And I think the George Floyd and the many others that happened throughout the last few months, over the last year, has only made it even more horrific. However, I still believe that there is room for an effective and efficient relationship with the police, meaning that I think that the only thing that we can do as a community is that we have got to still work with enforcement.
And you see, Mom.
Because when there is disturbances in our community, when there is violence in our community, we still need that level of enforcement to keep order. I've never been a fan of the defund or get rid of the police. I think that policing is the right kind of effective and efficient policing is an important part of our community. And we have to find that balance. I was sad to see Chief Green leave the police department because I think he had a path forward for that. But I do understand why he had to leave, because it became a lot more political than need be. However, I still think that as community leaders, it's our job to create those effective partnerships. And the reason I call it efficient is because when there is a disturbance in our community, but when we do have violence, when we have unfortunate deaths and murders, we need efficiency in policing and enforcement and investigation to root out and find those bad actors. Because unfortunately, there is a place to get them, prosecuted and moved out. Effective meaning that there has to be that balance. We cannot have police abusing our young people or even us. However, I think that there is a place for that to happen in a more effective way. Gun violence has gotten on the rise because I think people feel that they have to take on their own policing. I think that they have to protect themselves even from the police. And I think that if we don't have that balance that I'm talking about with the police and that efficiency with going after those that really need to be rooted out of our community and or addressed, then you're going to continue to see this gun violence increase. And unfortunately, the increase is happening with those incidents between our own people, our own young men, our own young women. And I think everybody knows that over the last few months, we've lost over 20 of our young people here in this Lansing community. So I think that I am very ready to put any kind of resource I can to support bringing that bridge between policing effectively and efficiently with our community. Absolutely.
Wow, that's excellent. A lot of people, just like you were saying, I believe with the partnership, I think we can get more done when we partner. So thank you for that, and thank you for that correction. We certainly don't want to speak ahead of time because that could be happening in the future. All right, Carnell, why don't the youth of today respect human life, and how can we change that? You're on mute.
One of the things to change that, I think that there has to be trust with the police department. I think that because there's a church on every block, I think they could play a bigger role in the community. A lot of kids at this point don't even believe in God, don't have faith, don't trust adults. And I think some of it has to do with the crack epidemic. Sad to say, but that's my perception of it, If you see adults that have children, and children are very judgmental, and they watch adults do things that's can't be trusted, then they have no faith in nobody. And children emulate what they see others do. So
I think that was a good response, just like you were saying. I think it's a lot of us that need to understand the minds of our kids so we don't have to blow up of them. And the more people that can tap into that, the better. All right, Attorney Oaks, what are the penalties in Michigan of an unlicensed person being caught carrying a gun?
So the offense, if you are in a traffic stop and officers find a gun in your car, or you have a gun on your person concealed under your shirt, that's a concealed weapon. Mm-hmm. So in Michigan, it's a 5-year felony for carrying a concealed weapon. Michigan has an open carry law, whereas if you legally purchase a firearm and you're of adequate age, you can openly carry a firearm. Many of our youth mistake that. But if you have that firearm in a vehicle or concealed in any fashion on your person, that's a 5-year felony. Mm. Also, if you have a firearm on you and you have drugs, or you're in the midst of committing any other crime, now you have what's called felony firearm, and that's a mandatory 2 years in prison before you even start working on your time underneath that 5-year sentence. So, and following up with the second question, does diverting a gun arrestee from the correctional system to alternative program influence the likelihood of future illegal gun carrying and rearrest? I do not believe so. I have many youth who I have been hired by who has gotten their first arrest for carrying a gun. I got one guy I'm working with right now who's a single father of two, gainfully employed. The mother of the children died 2 years ago. I'm trying to work a resolution to keep this off of his record. The prosecutor is not in favor of it. So at this point, we're just pushing to a trial, even though he was caught with it flat out. I'm not going to just settle for him just getting this conviction, because when speaking with the fella and asking, why are you carrying a gun? His response was, well, some of my friends, we just like shooting them in the air. And I said, okay, so what about for violence? Are you worried about somebody doing something to you? He said, no, I mean, I don't run with that type of crowd. I work, and if I'm not at work, I'm at home with my kids for the most part, but sometimes me and my friends hang out and we shoot guns in the air. That's one of the most stupidest reasons to have a gun in the car. But an individual such as that, if I'm able to keep this conviction off of his record, I believe he will not reoffend. It's just in this environment, it's common to have a firearm. So you can purchase a firearm for little to no money, and a lot of individuals have a gun just to have a gun. I represent individuals who get caught with guns with no bullets. Why? They don't know. They just wanted to have a gun. They only intend on using a gun, but everybody else got a gun. It's like a cell phone and what used to be a pager. Sometimes they may have it even if they don't get service on, just to say they have it. So I think it's a good thing, some of the programs that we have to keep these convictions off their records and avoid incarcerations. So no, I think that's a good thing, and it doesn't lead to their future committing of crimes.
You know, sitting in where I'm working, you see the ones with the firearms, just like you were saying. You know, the reasons that they give for having them, you got them right there. They're, you know, and rarely it's for protection. And I'm glad that you did say that out there, you know, for the ones that are listening and the parents, so that they can check cars in every place, because it's a 5-year. Now, before I go on, is it discretionary, Attorney Oaks, or is it mandatory for the gun?
As far as the felony firearm, if you have that firearm during the commission of a crime, of a felony, then it is mandatory, if you are convicted of that the judge give you 2 years in prison. Now, as it relates to the carrying a concealed weapon, that's just a statutory maximum of 5 years. Typically, an individual who has not been convicted of a crime in the past, have a clean record, their guidelines are going to be somewhere between probation and 3 months in jail for the first time getting caught with a gun. Okay,
that's good information. And also, if any of our panelists want to follow up with something that was said, you're certainly able to do that, because like I said, we may not think of everything but together while we are on the phone, because we want to get this across, because even, you know, in your employment and even what you all are all doing, you seem to see more colored faces with these guns. And then when it's time for them to be sentenced, you know, as we statistically finding out just recently with the prosecuting attorney, I'll be doing a show on that about, you know, guns being found in cars and things like that. So I think if we can just get that out there, that you carrying a gun and you're not licensed, it's 2 years. They don't have necessarily discretion. So thank you, Michael, for that. Before I go on, I do want to ask this really quick of Michael McKissick. Is the lack of adult supervision attributing to the gun violence?
I'll start.
Well, sure it is, Kim. So when the youth are at home, again, we're going back to the single parents again, right? Mm-hmm. Whether father or mother doesn't make a difference. So if you're single parent, or you don't have, like, for instance, a house that we're training youth at over there on Rundle Street. So the next door neighbor, their husband and wife got a little child. So they don't have family members in this state, so they don't have that. If somebody needs to keep the child, they got to find someone to keep their child. And so just think about that. If that was just a single mom or a single dad, right? So if the child is of age, so the mindset with the kids, let me go to that point. The mindset of kids now is different than the mindset 20 and 30 years ago. Okay, so my sister, may God have mercy upon her soul, she passed away natural death in 99. She used to actually babysit me at the age of 9 and 10. She was, well, at the age of 10, at the age of 10, right? So we look at that now as fast forward now, we like 10, she's a baby. So back then wasn't no such thing as welfare, stuff like that. Mom and dad worked, so during the summertime, she kept us, right? And she was a good second mom, so to speak. And she did a fantastic job with me and the rest of my siblings because she was much older. So, but just think about, we fast forward to now with the single mom or the single father staying home. You have a kid that's 13, 14 years old. He has a friend. They go over their house and the parents may have a gun. I use this for example. They may have a gun that's not locked up. And they playing around with a gun and they accidentally shoot one another or shoot something, because that just happened maybe last year. And actually it happened to me when I was a teenager. I was over at my cousin's house and one of my cousins was playing with the gun, because it wasn't locked up properly. It was a legal gun, but it wasn't locked up properly. That's what we got to get. We got to start educating people, because you're talking about the gun. We have to start educating people about guns and how to properly use them, and if you don't know how to properly use them, because a lot of individuals, as Michael Oakes was explaining to me, a lot of individuals, they are legal guns, but they're not legal to carry in their vehicles and stuff like that, right? So what you have to do, you have to educate the people, and that's the problem with the African American community. They're not educating them about guns. They're not educating them. If you purchase a gun from here, you got to do it. There's another step that you got to go through when you want to have it in your vehicle and things of this nature. There's other steps that you have to go through, and we're not educating them. Michael Lynn and Wayne Lynn has programs that they have. They was educating people about guns, safety of guns, and using them properly. If you don't do this properly, then therefore what's going to happen is your child gonna that's 17, 18 years old, he'll catch a case, as we say in the language of we'll catch a case. And then therefore that'll be on their record, right? Mm-hmm. So they'll be on their record. So therefore at this particular time, if an attorney can't get that off their record and it stays on their record, that would hinder them from being successful in life. Mm-hmm. And so we as a community, we have to start educating them. And so going back to having the kids, interacting with the kids is very important. Whether there are your children or not, around the neighbors, interact with them, speak to them, talk to them, let them know that you care about them. And that's what I do around my neighborhood. Sometimes I get so much involved and you got to excuse me how I'm moving around. And I know my wife is watching. She's going to be mad what I'm about to say. But yesterday, we trained them on Friday and Saturday at the after school, the summer program with the youth. And so at the end of the day, when time was up, we started training them to do everything about the construction of a house. And it was at that time at 2:00. So we're waiting for the parents to come pick them up. And so we decided to have a running race, right? In the streets, right? So we everybody's running everything. And, I'm paying them $2 for the winner, $3 for the winner. And I decided to have my old butt to run with these older kids, right? So my back is hurting now, baby. I'm sorry, my back is hurt. So, I was ready. So this is what you call the camaraderie with these kids, and being home with themselves. If a kid is home with yourself, your next door neighbor, maybe you should. And we have gotten standoffish with our neighbors. We don't even know our neighbors. We don't speak to our neighbors. And what happened if we have a kid that's staying home? Maybe we can interact with that kid if we're at home and letting them know, because and I always say this, and Wayne knows I talks about this all the time. When we grew up, You know, we grew up in that literally it takes a village. You know, again, my next door neighbor seeing me do something that I wasn't supposed to be doing, they corrected me. Mom and daddy got home, I got corrected again. So, and I know it's kind of hard with trying to correct these kids now because you don't know if they're going to pull a gun out there and shoot you. And then, or the parents might, if you're trying to correct them, or the parents might come to your house and say, well, why are you talking to my child? And so these things that we as a community, we have to get back to that loving our community, loving our neighbors, and loving these kids, because that's all they want. You know, that's all they want when they with us. And Wayne been on the job site. When they with us, you know, it's like a big old family. You know, it's like a big old family. You know, they learning and we teaching them the building trades, and it's a beautiful thing. So to answer your question, I think that in a nutshell, we need to get back to knowing that the kids are first of all our future. Second of all, that we need to get back to the neighborhood, taking them back, and we need to step up and say, you know, I love my community, I love Lansing, and this is what we're all about.
Thank you. Wayne, how does violence in TV, movies, and video games and music attribute to the gun violence?
Well, just like Mike was saying, it's all about airtime. It's all about airtime. If you put your child or you subject your child to movies, music, video games, that's what they're going to simulate. And I think that having good, solid relationships, I'm like Mike was talking about, I'm not going to get out there and run with them like he tried to do, but I'm too old for that. However, I do believe that having young people that can come and feel comfortable sharing with you, sharing their fears with you, talking about their dreams with you, talking about the things that are obstacles for them. I mean, I'm sure Carnell can say the same thing in his mentoring, that, you know, when young men and women come up and share their hearts with you and you can help guide them through, that's airtime. And I think that we all need to be very clear that we are competing with all of the other things that you listed there, the music and all those things. Now, I listen to a lot of it so I can see what my competition is. I want to know, what am I competing with? I want to know, what are they feeling is important to them, and I need to counter that. So, I mean, even sports, you know, I think that, you know, I'm a big fan of sports. I love the competitiveness. I love the conditioning. I love the aggressiveness that comes out of sports. But sometimes I have to use sports to be able to relate to our young people, because they're so inundated with sports. And so being able to use some of those very things that you listed, the TV shows and the movies and the music, being able to help them understand what life is all about through some of those instruments can be a good part of your ministry and or your relationship. But at the same time, know that we're in competition. We're in competition. So we've got to make sure that we can fill some of that airtime with real substantive programs, real substantive things like what Mikey's doing and what a lot of people are doing throughout the city with our young people, and trying to leverage that and partner with that to make sure that all of our young people can be a part of that, takes them away from that gun violence. I was in a gym the other day with some of the folk that are over at Geyer, you know, with the kids, and, you know, they went into the evening and they had some of the young adults there. And I told them, I said, for every young adult that you kept off the street, you could have saved somebody's life.
That's true.
You could have avoided some type of gun violence. You could have avoided some unfortunate interaction with the police. You could have kept them alive just another day. And more importantly, they were able to establish relationships with people that can be meaningful and substantial for them. And so those are the kinds of things that are important to our young people at curbing violence. Mike mentioned the fact that, you know, the gun safety program that we did. The reason we did that was because we had so many of our young people, you know, during COVID, being at home all the time, they were happening, you know, in their homes up to guns. I mean, guns laying around, guns around, and we didn't want them being able to to approach a gun and not know what to do or what not to do. And not that we're trying to get them to use it, but we're trying to make sure that they didn't get hurt by it. Again, all those kinds of things are important so we can get the trust of our young people. Last thing I'll mention, we also have in a component is a parent session. We ask our parents to come and we give them tools of mentoring their children. I know it sounds kind of strange. How can you mentor your own child? Well, there's some parents that really appreciate being able to get some tools to help them parent their young men and their women in their homes. Again, trying to help them figure out how to fill that airtime so it won't be taken so much by all the music, the videos, and all the movies that can take their minds away from what they really should be thinking about. And that sometimes is how to survive.
Thank you. I think we can't talk about this topic really without talking about some mentorship. So we got some more mentorship that we're gonna talk about in a minute. But Carnell, I think this is an important question. Probably one of the most that people are asking is, why are there so many guns easily accessible, and what methods are being used to move them?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, I know in Chicago, and I can't say that it's, for sure, but they talk about trains being left in the community for months with guns on them. And if you take young people who have nothing to do and they bored and the train sit there long enough, they're gonna go and look to see what's on that train. So that could be by design or by chance. But whatever the case, the reality is also, like Wayne just spoke of, a lot of people don't lock their weapons up. A lot of people don't think their kids know where their weapons are. But 95% of the time, especially young men, and I know as a kid, I was the same way, I would ramble. I would be curious to what my great-grandfather had. What is he doing with this? He's on the porch and I'm all in his drawers. Never thought there would be a gun, but I'm looking to see what he got, because I don't know. So, and somebody else spoke of embracing, showing love, and letting them know that you care. And that's rule number one, because it don't matter how much money you come in with, it don't matter how much stuff you dump in their lap, until you show them that you care, you're not doing anything. So.
Thank you for that. We might get some questions here. By design is that we've heard that a lot of times. I know we don't want to talk about it, but they getting their hands on these guns somehow. And I guess, just like we were saying, for some of these women who are raising young men, I think these are really, really good things that we need to start, looking at.
Well, allow me to say this.
By design, just like Carnell said, or it could be at your home or your uncles or your aunts, or, we have to get in front of this situation. Or I've talked to some young people myself, they said they get them from Detroit. You can get in Detroit and get them for next to nothing. But you know what? Those guns got to come home to your house. Right. So I think if nothing else on this section that we talked about is making sure that we are nosy, with what's going on in our kids. Yeah. I know when we had a huge family and they didn't, my mother and father didn't care about going through any of our stuff. So I think that's something we definitely need to get back to. Virgie and Aaron, they did not care about going through any of our stuff. These kids, you're invading my space. We need to get back in there. All right, so I'm gonna get on with that. Michael, why don't you tell us, you were talking you had something you wanted to give us. I lost that question, so give it to us.
Are you referring to me?
No, Michael Oaks, sorry.
So in looking at the youth and those that I deal with, and looking at what is triggering their violence is, in my opinion, a lack of vision for the future.
Mhm.
So most of the individuals whom I'm dealing with are not thinking about tomorrow. So they are strictly focused on what's happening right here, right now. So it's one where it's disrespect. If they feel that you've disrespected them in any fashion, they're going to deal with it right here today by any means necessary. And they're not going to think about the consequence because they are not thinking about a tomorrow.
Mhm.
If they don't have money right now, they're going to deal with this situation right now, today. I have a young individual who set up a robbery. He advertised the game system online, and he 16 years old, not a real criminal, because he had the guy come next door to his mama house to buy it. Goes outside, the guy was bringing him 2 pounds of weed for this game system. So he goes outside, shoots the guy a few different times, take the weed, and by the time the guy make it to the hospital and they get the phone, he used his real account. But at that time, he did not think about what the consequence is going to be. Whereas an individual who thinking about it tomorrow is anticipating, I can't do this because this is going to trigger that, versus someone who is not thinking of that in any fashion. So more when I'm talking to the youth, I'm trying to talk to them about tomorrow. What's your long-term plan here? So who cares this person did this, that, or the other to you, or said something to you or to your friend? That's not a reason for you to turn around and go shoot up the car. Whereas I realized it was serious. Why I had one youth tell me, I didn't even kill anybody. They trying to press these charges against me as if I actually killed someone. I said, but you shot up the vehicle and it was people in the vehicle, but I ain't kill anybody. I said, oh, that's how y'all really think. So I think that's one of the biggest things, just trying to reach our youth to get them to think about tomorrow in the future. And that's something that Mike McKissick, he's good at as far as in working with them and getting the youth paid. So once we get money in their pockets, that's taking away one of the factors that they have to go out and commit a crime.
That's some good stuff. I'm so glad we can replay this because we can play that over and over again about that respect issue. And I think we need to have a new definition, a definition for then, a definition from now, because the respect that we had then and now, two different things. So thank you. We're going to move. We answered a lot of the questions in regards to mentorship, but I do want to ask Carnell a question. Is the future of Black boys in the hands of their mothers and white female teachers?
Personally, I think the foundation can be good in the home, but I think more important is the environment they go off into when they leave the home. And you can be a Christian household, but live 2 blocks from a project, and your kids are going to wind up in that project, or they're going to wind up in that element if you're not conscious of what they're doing when they leave the house. I think it's also very important to give them things to do rather than allow them to find things to do. Mm-hmm. We're speaking on trades, and we're speaking on teaching them how to, use their hands and build things and so on and so on. When they get out into the community, and a lot of people turn kids loose when they turn 17 and 18, they're lost. And the reality is a lot of African-American males, I'll say, there's a study that says that their light bulb don't go off until they're in their mid-30s. Mm-hmm. So think about this. If they haven't been embraced until that point, look at how many things they could possibly do wrong. Mm-hmm. So I think the mothers play a great role. And yes, there are white teachers, but the one thing that I see missing more than anything is Big Ma and Maria. Mm-hmm. Big Ma and Maria got a date. She in the club. So I ain't got time to be babysitting no kids. Whereas when mothers was having kids young, Big Mom would take over, let mama and daddy find themselves. And then when they were actually ready, they could double back and do what they actually was supposed to do. That's not happening anymore. So now you got teenage or very young women who are losing people, are losing their kids, and there's no male in the household. So she's trying to play both roles by herself. And this is what you're dealing with. So I don't know if that answered your question because I was all over the place.
Michael M., you want to do a follow-up on that?
I do. So, you know, Michael Oakes is actually on the board, or he's one of our board members of Mikey 23. And so what our board members talk about is the biggest thing what we talk about is the legacy of Michael, helping others, right? But what we have to really think about, all organizations, and I say this, so if certain organizations can't get along, forget that, throw that out the window. It's not about you, it's about the you. Throw that, you can't get along with the organization. We don't care about your feelings. What we care about is the youth, right? So me talked about this, that what you're gonna have to do is we look at our kids as a garden that we always use an analogy, right? The kids are like a garden. If you don't take care of your garden, the weeds take over. Yeah. And so what we need more gardeners, right? So you got Wayne Lynn, Michael Oakes, and this brother right here, you, Kim, all of us collectively need to come together for our youth, because if we're worried about somebody's feelings, we don't care about your feelings. I don't. If it comes to the youth and saving them, you know, I really don't care about your feelings. I care about these youth around here killing each other, because as I always say, and this is the hardest thing, when there's always a murder in Lansing, it affects my wife, right? It affects my wife so much that if you always see me all the time, it's only because she can't come up here, right? And I'm going to say this continuously all the time. And we have to remember to say that our youth are our future, for one. Number two is that we have to always think about that's somebody else's child. And number three is that when my wife feel like somebody's getting murdered, it's always like another Mikey been murdered, another Mikey been murdered, another Mikey been murdered, another Mikey been murdered. So we, as a community, we got to save our Mikeys, as we call them, right? And so my daughter said something, my oldest daughter said something this morning, and it made me think, right? Somebody says they thank my daughter for having their child in our summer youth program. She's a single mom, and she said that I want to thank your dad, because when I picks him up, he's all happy, he's all enthused, he does his homework, and he's really happy. And so she told her, well, the kids are like her little brother because of Mikey being murdered. She's thinking that, me thinking these are my kids, which this is how I look at them, right? And she thinking these are her little brothers, and we taking care of them. We trying to mentor them and do the best we can. So again, I think the remedy of all of this, Kim, is that we collectively need together and be on the same page and forget about your feelings, right? And come together and then save our youth, because they need our help. They need our help. And together, I think we can really we can do very good things with our community.
Thank you, Michael. Because one of the things is some of the media with, what we're trying to do is to by us, for us, about us, correctly about us. Yeah. And so this is meant so that people like yourself that's actually on the ground, you will be able to communicate, just like you were talking about the media. Every time we see media, we see something bad about somebody of color. And so the more and more, one of the things I want to continue to do is to make sure that we are represented in the right way, in the truthful way. So thank you. And I know I'm so happy to see all the young men that are working together for the goal of youth and not about your own personal feelings. So I love that. All right, Wayne, can you explain the process on how a person can become a mentor, an advocate, a role model for the youth. We talked about it, but just somebody out there may be listening and want to know what steps do I take? What can I do?
Well, first of all, you got to care. I mean, you got to want to make a difference. And the good news is that there's a lot of people out there, women, men and women, that want to make a difference. They just don't know how. They just don't know how to put their finger in the spot that's best for them. And like I talk about with Mikey and those that are doing sports, and those that are doing, photography and like Greg, doing media arts and all, those are all mentoring opportunities. Because if you can grab a young man or a young lady and take her into a studio, him in the studio, or out on a job site, or in an engineering lab, or in an attorney's office, or into the courtroom, you are mentoring. I mean, when I look at Mikey out there on the site, sharing a power tool with a young person and helping them cut something in half. I mean, I've never been handy, so I'm good. I'm gonna tell you right now, that ain't my thing. But I learned a couple things the other day. So the way you become a mentor is you got to care. You got to really want to take what you have, what God has given you, and you're willing to share it. And I mean, share it liberally. The other thing is, from a mechanical perspective, we for Turning Point, of course, because we have a liability and all with mentoring, there's a background check and there's all those kinds of things. But one of the things that we also do is we ask that, that you give of your time. Now, again, that's another sacrifice. We ask that people give at least 20 hours a month, to mentoring. And that could be in a lot of different ways. We do group sessions. So we bring the young men together twice a month for our recreation session and for our mentoring sessions. But then we also do things throughout the month for community service and all kinds of things. Recreation, we try to do some fun things as well. We're down for the summer, but we go from September to May. But this summer we tried to do a few more things because of all the things that were going on in the streets. And usually we try to take that time for planning. Matter of fact, I'm missing a planning meeting tonight because of this, but the elders, what we call our mentors, the elders are doing that right now. But more importantly as well is that you've got to remember as a elder or a mentor, you are the adult in the room. And when I say that, I don't mean bossy, authoritative, pull up your pants, take the earring out your ear, I ain't talking about all that. I'm talking about you are the one to be the one to help guide. You're trying to be that role model. You're trying to help them understand what it looks like to be in a marriage, what it looks like to have a job, to get through conflict, to deal with the police, to treat women correctly, to have good, solid relationships, how to be a good friend, how to be a good brother, how to be a good dad. And so all of those things, you are the adult. You are the example. I got young men that have been in our program now, have been out of our program for years, and they're married now, and they still call me. I was just with a couple at Buffalo Wild Wings the other night. One getting ready to go to the Navy, scared to death, but I hope he ain't listening because I told him he shouldn't be scared.
Was that the one over? Was that the
Yes,
one?
that's the one that was with us the other day. Yeah, he's leaving next week. But the point is, I was there with them, and they're hitting me with all these questions. I was the adult in the room. And so we've got to be ready to be that mentor. So outside all the mechanics of, having a background check and doing getting the liability and all those kinds of things. The most important thing is that you want to make yourself available and you want to care. And you don't have to care like I care. You can care like you care. You can bring you. I tell people all the time, mentors is like a salad. When you look at a salad, you can see the lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers. None of it changes. It's all there together. We can be diverse in what we bring to the table to be mentors, but we can collectively do the very same thing, and that is serve and develop and secure the safety and success futures of our young people. So being a mentor is very multifaceted, all doing the same thing. And like Mike said, it's not about your feelings. It's not trying to step on people. It's not trying to do more than somebody else. It's about doing something beneficial for our young people in our community, because other communities do it.
Right.
That's how they make it.
Mm-hmm.
I watch other communities mentor their young people at work, at home, in church, on the courts, where, all over. Let me tell you just one thing. I'll never forget, I was in a courtroom and I had one of my young men, Michael Oates. I had one of my young men in court. And before we got in court, I coached him to what he needed to say and how he needed to behave, because I knew the surroundings. I knew what was going on. And so before we came up, there was another young man, another of a different community. They were there. And when the young man that was being questioned got stumped, he turned around and he asked, he just kind of got some confidence from looking at the guy behind him. So when they finished, I took that man's position behind the little wall there. I'm not a big court person, but the little small wall. And he was over on the other side with the talking to the judge. But when my guy turned around to look at me, he didn't even say anything. He just kind of looked at me for confidence. The judge said, "What are you looking at him for?" I'm like, "What?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And the bailiff's like, "You can't speak." Oh, no. I want to know. What do you mean? He's my guy.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Is he your son? Well, not technically, but yes. I'm representing him. He's my guy. He's looking at me because I've told him what he needed to do to be here and how to be successful here. So he's looking at me for confidence. Is that a problem, Your Honor? And it was a problem because that's not what they expect.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the kind of, we have to step up sometime. And
Mm-hmm.
we have to cover our young people because they need us, particularly in moments like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I became friends with that judge, and that judge and I became, more eye to eye in what was going on. But it was unusual because they don't see that, I guess, that much. And I don't go in courtrooms that much. But I think that when we want to be a mentor, we have to do what we do, and we have to bring it, and we have to bring it right, and we have to bring it from our hearts, and we got to give it liberally.
Okay, Wayne, so you got an individual who's listening right now who wants to be a mentor to somebody. What avenue you going to give them? What should they do?
For the Turning Point of Lansing, you can go to you can contact me, or you can go to our website, and there's an elder application, and you sign up, and we can get you through the process. You go through a screening, we go through interviews, we make sure that our values align, we send you through a background check, and you get to work. And it costs you nothing.
Okay, what about a time commitment? Do they got to be ready to give a certain amount of time, or are you flexible?
No, we ask for at least 20 hours a month, and you can flex that the way you want. But there are some things that we do, like we do have 2 sessions that we do, a recreation session and a student session every other week. But outside of that, we have other things as well. And then we also ask that our young men, that our elders be in contact with the young men in their age group. We have 4 different age, and we have 7 and 8, 9th, 10th, and 11 and 12. And each elder is assigned to one of those age groups. And throughout the month, we ask that they stay in contact in some way, shape, or form with those students outside of the student sessions that we do as well. COVID kind of messed that up a little bit because we couldn't do as much as we did in the past, but we're eager to get back boots on the ground this year. Absolutely.
Those are some good thanks, Michael, for shooting those out, because I'm telling you, we get a lot of replays. We get thousands of people that go back and replay, so they'll be able to go ahead and get that information. So the next question is for Michael O. And there's 2, but I'm going to pick this one because this one is very, very delicate. Can you explain what the school to prison pipeline is for our listeners?
So the school to prison pipeline is essentially when individuals from certain communities are more likely to be incarcerated than other communities. And so in looking at it and looking at the factors as to why, there's a number of things that come into play, such as the individuals being quicker to be disciplined at the school, at one school in inner city communities versus other schools. Another being the lack of extracurricular activities in sports at inner city schools versus others. And we all see that when individuals are not playing sports or having other activities and things to do, they have more free time on their hands. And that's the devil workshop. So now you got an individual who's getting out of school, as we talked about earlier. You may have one or two parents at home, they may work, and they have, now this student has free time between the parent coming home and they get into other activities. So, and I think it's generally understood that playing sports helps the individual in all avenues of life. My 13-year-old son, he's 6'4". And as I told him, you don't have to play basketball. You don't got to play football, but you're going to play something. I don't care. So because sports, it teaches you so much. It's more about what happens on that court. So it's teaching you the ability to take a loss. So you don't react certain ways. So you get more used to it, to the workmanship. So and looking at this school to prison pipeline, we have certain individuals from certain schools that, like I said, get disciplined. I got one case where I just finished fighting over 2 years. He was a 12th grader and got into a fight at the school, and the prosecutor charged him as an adult assault and battery. So because they said, well, he was 17. So thankfully the laws have changed come October 1st. Individuals 17 and under will be continue to be prosecuted in the juvenile system. But as the law stands now, once you turn 17, they could charge you as an adult. And that's what they did for this kid in this case for a school fight. Whereas if we're in another community, that wouldn't even been an issue. They would not have had to come and hire an attorney because their child got into a real simple fight. It was all of 20 seconds in the classroom. So, but that's one thing where they look at to say, because you got individuals who getting expelled out of school for insignificant reasons, now that individual may not return back to school. You want to kick somebody out of school for 30 days in their senior year, they may not graduate because now in that time period, they finna start hanging out with this person, doing this, doing that, and you know what? Screw it. So it's more on in this school to prison pipeline, us trying to effect change on it ourselves and not just resting on the board of education to make the changes in their policy and doing the mentorship and working with the youth. So, but that's what that is.
Thank you. Michael McKissick, when many Black boys undergo mental or physical abuse in school or in the home, guaranteeing low self-esteem, please provide some solutions for us.
So one of the things that we have to do, you guys excuse me, my back is sore. I told you I was running.
That's okay.
So one of the things that you have to do, you have to tell a child, remove that limitation that they can't be certain things in life, right? So we host, we couldn't host it last year, like Wayne said, which is job shadowing, which is called Walking My Footsteps for a Day. And that's what we do is typically we line up a lot of professionals. Michael Oakes, he was one of our mentors that they got a chance to job shadow a professional, each professional, a judge, city council members, state representative, all this type of professionals that was involved. We're doing it again. We got a sign up list. We started it at the end of the year, but we're kind of waiting because the numbers are going back up as far as our COVID is concerned. But anyway, so what we try to do is with the mindset and the mental aspect of a child, we try to instill confidence in them, right? Mm-hmm. You don't instill confidence in a child, then therefore the morality they're gonna feel like they can't do anything. And so, and like the whole panel is what we're basically saying is that you have to give them something positive and still something that's negative. If you don't try to show them the positive way, they're gonna find that negative way, right? And so we as a panelist group, we're trying to tell the kids that we mentored, and we're trying to let them know, listen, you can do anything you want to do. And when I tell the kids when I'm training, I said, listen, you may not want to be a contractor or a builder. I said, well, one day you might want to own your own home. You can call a contractor like me to fix it up because I'm gonna charge you a bunch of money, right? Or you can do it yourself. Or if you don't want to do it, if a contractor does come in your house, you know the fundamentals of what's going on in your house and how much he's supposed to be charging you. And so you have to on the mindset of the kid and the mental, and that's what we're really running into. It's all of this, what we're going in, everything is mental. Mm-hmm. When you have a veteran come from over, from fighting the wars overseas, he comes home, what is that famous word that he has on? What is that, right? He has a mental thing that he feels like he's still fighting over there. Same thing with the kids over here. When they hear gunshots all the time, this is not normal when you hear gunshots in your neighborhood. I mean, think, oh, it was a gunshot. And if you notice, and I don't know if anybody paid attention to this, we have a lot of gunshots in our city, but they're not reported. They're not reported. And sometimes that can be good and then sometimes it can be bad, but we need to know what's going on in our community. Mm-hmm. And so we as a community, the mental aspect is very important. So that's part of the puzzle of dealing with our youth, because I'm hands-on with our youth that comes to Mikey 23, right? So I can see, and when I'm dealing with them, their confidence level, right? I can see who's more, hands-on, can get at it, and versus who's shy. And so the person that's really are timid by grabbing a power tool, I give them more attention, right? Versus the person that jumps in and know how to do it. So you have to kind of fill out the mental aspect and the capabilities of each individual. And I think that's very important.
Thank you for that. You gave us a segue right into our next thing, and that is I want to talk a little bit about trauma. And it's not to anybody specific, but anybody on the panel can answer it as we wind down. What are some of the traumas and triggers for Black men?
It's interesting you asked that question because before the pandemic, and a couple sessions through the pandemic, we had a psychologist or a counselor come and talk with our young men about trauma, because what we found out is that one of the most compelling aspects of trauma for a lot of young men and a lot of young kids is what they've gone through in their past. I mean, what was going on at home, what's going on in families. And I mean, and let's just be clear, we are a community where what happens at home stays at home. And some of that doesn't need to stay at home, really. Some of that really needs some help, some explanation, some airing out. And we found out that a lot of trauma happens in the personal aspects of how young people deal in and around their local and very intimate environment. And that can be from, families having difficulty with money. That could be families, having food security issues. It could be, violence in the home. It could be, all kinds of issues that are there, just health issues. I mean, you would be surprised at what level of trauma young people are infected by with somebody who's just sick at the house. Mm-hmm. and how they put that in their minds and what that makes them feel like as it relates to them and how they are to proceed as adults, dealing with sickness. So there's a lot of different aspects of trauma. And then that turns into conflict, being on edge, being very anxious, and being uptight a lot. And so when a kid snaps sometimes, they're really not snapping at you. They're snapping at that trauma trigger from whatever all those things are that's in their lives. And before they know it, they've already snapped. So that's one of the biggest things I see with trauma.
Thank you. Carnell?
Yeah, I wanted to say that it's a few things. When I was a foster care provider, they said that every 7 seconds, someone is being molested. And a lot of people that I've talked to, young men or, somebody, a family friend or the babysitter, and that's something that a lot of people don't express. It don't come out into their much later on in life, but they've carried that burden their entire life. And then another thing is, you may not have the clothes that some of your classmates have. A lot of people don't realize the things that a child or even a young adult deal with on a day-to-day basis. A lot of adults feel like, well, you got a hot meal, you got a bed, you got a room, you got clothes, and it's so much bigger than that. Me at 50 plus, oftentimes I hear people say, well, if it was me, but you're 50 and you know how to deal with those things. You're talking about someone who's just coming into it and don't have any avenues or even understand how to, solve their own issues. And then they ashamed to even say anything about it. So those are things that we have to look at things or young folk differently, when dealing with things. And a lot of people always just say, oh, these teenagers just crazy. But the adults before us said the same thing,
That's good. Anybody that I know I've been called a crazy many times.
No comment.
That's why I was chuckling. Anybody else want to tackle that before I move on?
I just want to mention one other thing too. We found out too from the counselor talking, a lot of adults may pass their trauma onto their kids. So if they have unresolved trauma in their lives, they in effect, not intentionally most times, traumatize their children with their residual trauma from their lives.
That's good. Thank you. I've had a lot of questions here, but I'm going to get down to the meat of this one. How can we encourage males of color to get additional assistance when it comes down to mental health? Because a lot of times, just recently, it was just, oh, you crazy, just leave her alone. She going through this. I mean, it was always, it wasn't welcoming in the community. So, we're using the word now and we're embracing the word now in the community. So how can we encourage, that for us to, for somebody who's dealing with those mental health issues? Somebody tackle that real quick.
One way I deal with it with my clients and others is I put it in the fashion of, hey, sometimes it helps you to just go to somebody who don't know you, but none of the other people you around, and you can just vent and get it off your chest. So basically you paying them just to keep their mouth shut. So other than you picking up the phone calling so-and-so and so-and-so, and it can come back around, man, you go find somebody in the next town over, man. Look, you go get you a therapist over there in Ionia or wherever, and just go talk to them, and you go just lay your burdens down on them, and then just come on back here to this city, and nobody got to know nothing. That's the angle I go.
Well,
that's some good stuff. Anybody want to follow up?
Well, you know what? My 3 kids. So when Michael was murdered, their mother and I, we tried our best because that's the first time that's happened to our family, right? So the mental aspect of it, and I'm getting to the youth. My three kids, because they age from 18 to 30 something, sometimes they can relate to their peers better than we can, right? They can talk to them better than we can, because they, they are their sounding boards. They talk to them. They reveal certain things to them that they won't reveal to us. And so, Michael, actually, he was instrumental in this. Michael Oakes was instrumental in this, starting an organization for my three kids, a sibling against gun violence, right? And so, and my oldest daughter, she's going for her master's in social work, and so having that aspect of it, when you try to, and even my youngest daughter, that's going to be her minor, so she just headed off to college today. I'm gonna miss her. She got on the plane, so, yeah, I'm gonna miss her. So anyway, so one of the things about that is that the trauma that we were talking about and relating to and how to get help, sometimes their peers can coach them into doing it versus we can, because like you said, Kim, we say, oh, you crazy, go sit down somewhere, so we have to. And I noticed one youth the other day, his mother came after she picked him up, and she said that he was kind of down because he don't think nobody liked him in the group, right? And his other guy that he partnered up with, that I always kind of partner him up with, he wasn't there that particular day because his camaraderie was with him. But he showed up yesterday, and then when I talked to the mother, she said that confirms that, he was happy when he seen him and stuff like that. So, and I'm bringing that up is that getting mental help is not easy for our youth or anybody, even adults. We think we can handle it. And my faith keeps me. That's what keeps me grounded. My faith, and God, and that's for me. That's my mental aspect of it when I worship my Lord and everything. That has a lot to do with your faith in God, because a lot of these kids, they don't have that foundation of God in their life. They don't have that foundation to fall back on. And so the mental part of it, we have to really be. It's a sensitive issue as far as the African American community, because we're not used to telling kids, you need to go get some help, and we approach it in the wrong way. We have to learn how to use our words right in order to make it look more acceptable to our youth.
Thank you.
Well, one of the ways that I think is really good too is it was hard for me to tell kids or anybody to go to therapy if I myself was not going to go to therapy. So now when I go to therapy, I can share with them that it helps me, and it won't be something placid. It won't be something that I'm just saying off the top of my head. And so I think that, and now that, first time I went, I was kind of apprehensive. I didn't think about the Ionia thing though, but I should have went out of town because y'all know my therapist.
Don't let me bump into you in Ionia.
I didn't think about that, bro. You should have talked to you earlier. But seriously though, I do believe that, having that, now that I understand that interaction, I can even be even more prescriptive around, when people need it and how they can use it and what it's for and what it means and how it feels. Because even a young boy, they're still very apprehensive about talking about what's going on, because as I said, in our community, what happens at home stays at home. You don't tell nobody none of that stuff. And so to your point, it is a struggle, but I do see that opening up a little bit more. I see, when we brought a therapist in to our group, and he's part of our our program, and he talks with the young men and the parents. I think that opened up the opportunity for people to get a little bit more comfortable with therapy, and they go to him, but they go to others as well. And I think that has been a wonderful opportunity for particularly some of the people that are dealing with some real struggles and just some things that's going on. It doesn't have to really be a struggle. It can just be trying to sort things out and trying to understand just growing up. And all of that becomes beneficial very quickly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are actually winding down, but I did let everybody know, usually I try to do everything in an hour, but I knew these were such hot topics, and I wanted to be sure that our panelists had enough time so that we can archive this information. So later on, share it, do what you need to do. Somebody may have questions, they can listen to this and they can go with God. Okay, so this was a really, kind of tippy one here. What do you think when you hear about police brutality and people say, what about Black on Black violence? What do you think when you hear that? We talk about police brutality and Blacks and this and that, and then somebody comes back and say, well, what about Black on Black?
Well, for me, I view it as two separate things because, again, the Black on Black is just something that the global minority, as I call it, is came up with to try to throw you off, to make you lose focus. Because in other communities, I see it. I'm in the courtrooms. I see the crimes against those of their own race. Individuals tend to commit crimes around those who they are around. So I have a boatload of clientele out in St. John's. It's a lot of non-Black on non-Black crime in St. John's, I assure you. So it's some of the craziest stuff, but that don't get publicized.
Right.
The media want you to focus on this small aspect over here versus the big issue. Let's look at how this officer treats this person versus that person.
Right.
So that's a separate issue as opposed versus looking at what's going on amongst themselves in their community. Because in the Asian community, a lot of the crimes is against each other there. So it's the same throughout each community. So I just let individuals know there's two separate things. So one don't have anything to do with the other.
Well, I'll say this. In Hispanic communities, it's Hispanic versus Hispanic. Do you ever hear about white on white crime? How many times have you ever heard of a Black officer? There's several Black police officers. How many times have you ever heard of a Black police officer shooting a white person in the streets? And if that did happen, what would happen to that police officer? Exclamation point.
Anybody else want to say anything about this? All right. Well, I think we are certainly winding down, and thank you all for, we got people chiming in, people are saying a lot of things, and we had some people in the chat. So we all appreciate you hanging on. We usually do an hour, but today, again, I see if there's a question in here, Greg, if you can get that ready, we'll try to answer it. What's the question, Greg?
It is, thanks, Michael, for your input. So true. Let us not let the school districts off. When you all were in school, you had extra activities that led to college and other fields of work. With the new federal funds coming to schools, those activities need to be reinstated. Lots of kids made those activities lifelong goals. Kids have nothing constructive to do after school. The city needs to have curfews closing the parks at 10 p.m. for kids. What happened to the 100 Black Men organization in this city?
Okay.
And that was from Ruby. And I stumbled over that word. I'm not sure if it's spelled.
Okay, so that was Ruby Helton. I believe Ruby Helton used to be the principal of Shabazz Academy. And so she's done lots of work. And I think to answer some of her questions, even today, we have several organizations that are representing today that have come together that we did not necessarily working together. I had no idea that the organizations were working together. And I believe the network that's here today have over hundreds of men that they are working for. And because of the pandemic, a lot of things haven't been going on. But I think Michael and his construction company has still been, every time I turn around, I see him working on houses. I mean, it just does my heart good. I'm seeing Michael O in the courtroom representing Wayne Lynn, Carnell. So I think each person has their own individual aspect that they're doing. But again, coming together tonight and some other things are showing that we are coming together. The last question I have for you all is, and what message do you want to leave with our virtual audience? Just if you have this time, what message do you want to leave? I'll start with Michael M., Wayne Lynn, Carnell, Michael Oakes.
Resources for our youth, and I'll leave it at that only because we are hosting a action march, not Stop the Violence March, next week at starting at Pilgrim Rest, August the 7th. And typically when you have marches, they are you march because you're angry about something, then you go home, right? And that's it. We calling this an action march, and it's all about resources. We got resources from the Turning Point and other organization that we're putting on a digital flyer in a hard copy because some grandparents don't have computers and stuff like that, so we put it on a hard copy so they can stick it on their refrigerator, right? And so the old timers. So it's all about resources that we want to collectively together, all the organization together in Lansing when we come together with this action march, and letting our audience know that we are here for you. Whatever you want your child to be involved in, whether it's a Turning Point, Mikey 23 Foundation, or any other organization, we are here for you. At first we had a limited space, but we decided to take that cap off only because we didn't want that person that we said there was a limit, and then that child be involved in something crazy during the summertime. So it's all about resources.
Thank you.
The thing I would say on top of resources and leveraging those resources is let's put aside differences. Mm-hmm. As adults, as men and women of this community, we're not going to serve it properly and effectively and efficiently if we let our own stumblings over each other trip us up. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, let's not ignore the fact that we are diverse. Yes, let's not ignore the fact that we think differently. Yes, we all have different ways and approaches to solve the very same problem. But those should not be stumbling blocks for us to not get it done. So I just ask, leaving I hope an indelible mark on people is let's put aside the differences and let's not let those differences be our stumbling blocks and make us not hit our mark.
Okay, I would like to say that we can't continue to look the other way when there's things that's going on in our community that's out of order. I like to say that everybody should get involved. All kids can't play sports, but there are other things that they can do. Arts, trades, music, whatever. And if there's something wrong with your child, you would know it before anybody else. Find some help and get some help for that child.
And my leaving point would be to speak to your youth or any and everybody, person around you about self-respect. One thing I've reinstated to my kids repeatedly is I respect myself enough to make sure I make it home back to my family by the end of the day. my kids know that I'm a licensed weapons carrier. So good chance I may have a gun on me. But my kids also know that I don't fall for no mediocre disrespect. I tell my kids, hey, somebody can step on my shoe and I'd say to them, excuse me, I'm sorry. So for my foot being in the way to let them step on my shoe. So my kids understand that no matter what happened, I will take a whooping before I pull out my gun and kill somebody, because I was raised taking whoopings. So if you're gonna fight, you gotta be able to win a fight and lose a fight. Hey, my kids know we got a race car. Hey, I don't win them all. You know what? Hey, it don't mean they got a better car or a better driver. It just wasn't my day. Sometimes when you have a fight, it just ain't your day. So I got enough self-respect where I don't want to take somebody else's life if I don't have to. And you never know what somebody else is going through. So I use it as teaching points when we watching different movies to say, see, you see this person that had a rough day, this, that done happened to them so far. So if somebody cut them in line or cut them off in traffic, they may lose it. So you never know what somebody else is going through. So my biggest thing is just teaching any and everybody around me just about self-respect. Respect yourself enough not to fall into other people's traps.
Woo, wow. I'm telling you, I feel inspired. I feel empowered. I'm telling you, it is so good and refreshing to see what is happening in our communities and what work is being done. When you get done watching CNN and all these different things, you will think nothing is taking place. But I'm telling you, this hour and a half, the listeners and I have seen and felt the hearts of the men and all the things that you're doing. Thank you all for being a part of something great. I cannot wait to our next time we are on. So again, we are going to see you, and don't think you're getting rid of me, because I'm here to stay in your face. All right. So again, thank you all for being on, and we'll see you next time.
Good to meet you, and